Hello and welcome to Channels Book Club. My name is Olakunle Kasumo and it's great to be on the show today. We've got an episode that will keep you watching and listening because the topic is one that affects all of us in Nigeria. Boko Haram. Since the introduction of this terror organization, Nigeria has been changed in so many ways. The war against Boko Haram has redefined Nigeria in multiple ways. The former Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabor, has boldly written a book on Boko Haram. I use the word boldly because there is somewhat a culture of silence amongst our leaders, especially military leaders. Because of the sensitivity of their position, they tend to be quiet on a number of things and watch things happen after they leave office. But he said to himself, I've got to write a book, and he's written one that is quite explosive. This is one you have to read. But I will leave him to talk about the book so that you can get your insights and get inspired to read, I hope. He joins us to discuss his book, his debut book, Scars. Enjoy this.
General Lucky Irabor is a former Chief of Defense Staff of Nigeria. General Irabor is an alumnus of Obafemi Awolowo University, University of Ghana, Bangladesh University of Professionals, Harvard Kennedy School of Government, USA, and European Center for Security Studies in Garmisch, Germany. He's a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, as well as the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. General Irabor served for 37 years post-commissioned service as an adjutant of Nigeria's prestigious military training school, Nigerian Defense Academy, a commander of the 53 Signals Brigade, theater commander of Operation Lafia Dole, and force commander of the Multinational Joint Task Force. He joins Channels Book Club to discuss his debut book, Scars, Nigeria's Journey and the Boko Haram Conundrum.
General Lucky Irabor, nice to have you on Channels Book Club.
It's my pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you, sir.
Thank you, Kunle.
Salute. How do you guys do it?
Thank you so very much. Lovely. Thank you.
It's really an honor having you on the show.
Yeah.
And when the idea of this book, when I first learned that you were writing a book, the first thing that went through my mind, is there any former Chief of Defense Staff that wrote a book? I was just playing through in my head. I can't remember. Do you have an answer to that? Has any of your predecessors written a book? I wouldn't say a book like this because I think a book like this is the first.
Yes.
But can you recollect?
Well, I can't easily recollect that, apart from perhaps General Krinade, who I think has written a book. I've not laid my hands on it, but I think I'm told that he has written one.
General Krinade.
Yes. And of course, there are biographies too that have been written, I think, about General Emel Agwai. I'm not sure if he, by himself, authored that autobiography. I'm not too sure. Beyond that, yes, I can't easily, because since I've not laid my I've not laid my hands on any of them. Yes.
Great. Now, let's just before we dive fully into your book titled Scars, you've lived a very distinguished military career.
Thank you.
Frontline at times, administrative at times, teaching at times, across. What has that been like? I like to tell viewers about the authors, the man or the woman behind the book. What are those things about yourself that most people out there probably, may have little idea of?
Well, thank you. My time in service, spanning close to 4 decades, quite exciting for me. For me, I'm a very inquisitive person. I always want to ask questions. I always want to know. For both my superiors and my peers and subordinates alike, one thing you will find with me is, wanting to know more, wanting to ask questions, to ask why, to ask, what more can be done amongst other issues. Then, of course, if you also, run foul of the law, you are in trouble with me. Especially those who were cadets, even officers who were in Nigerian Defense Academy when I was adjutant, I think they will have some stories to tell along that line. But it's all part and parcel of the career itself.
Great. I'm sure we'll delve more into.
Yeah.
But Scars. Incredible book we have here.
Thank you.
The Boko Haram conundrum is one we've battled with over the years.
Correct.
So you finally decided to write a book on this. I would like you to just tell us a bit about the story behind the book. Well, what inspired it? Why did you write this?
Okay, thank you. At the initial stages of Boko Haram, that is at a time when the world, especially Nigerians, began to know Boko Haram, I was then serving. I had just completed my defense college in Bangladesh. So on my return, I was deployed as the principal staff officer to the then Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Hijirika. And so I could read his mind by the interactions we were having. Most times in his office, he will call staff officers, to look at the evolving scenario at the time. And also building it up to the fact that, the land forces, the Nigerian Army, had the preponderance of responsibility to address such issues. So he was looking forward to say, look, what can we do? What capacity do we have amongst other issues? Then fast forward, Now, after I served him for 2 years, I was now posted to 3 Division. 3 Division then was in charge of the entire Northeast before the creation of 7 Division. And so the entire Borno State, Adamawa State, Yobe, Bauchi, and Plateau State were under 3 Division. And then I was the brigade commander under the division, the Signals Brigade Commander. And then I was now providing communication support for the then Operation Restore Order, which was, beginning to evolve in addressing those issues. And I began to see that there are issues. And then shortly afterwards, after serving for about 2 years, within that period, the Chibok girls, incident happened. And then I was promoted in 2014, and then I left briefly to Army headquarters, and then returned, by which time, there was a change of administration, and then a different capacity, first as the officer that was charged to prepare the Military Command and Control Center, and then I later on became the Deputy Theater Commander and then Theater Commander. And so the responsibility was now, foisted on my shoulders. I began to see issues with respect to not just Boko Haram, but generally defense and security.
So the realities were different from the perceptions.
Correct.
And that was a burden for you.
It'd be a huge burden. A huge burden. In fact, if I may, at this point, even let out to the public that while serving as theater commander, I almost had a desire. In fact, I actually voiced out a desire to resign.
Really?
Yes, because of the burden at the time. But
that people don't understand what is actually going on.
Because you cry in your closet, but then you have to show a bold face to those you command. And then, of course, there were a lot of gains that we made, but they didn't know the pains that led to those gains. And then, of course, the losses that we're having, and then, so a whole lot of things, and the pains were quite deep. But then Thankfully, I had, other counsel. Look, be patient in life. Life is in stages. Be patient. Things will get better.
Now, you wrote about the trickiness of writing this.
Correct.
I know that there is this thing about you, high-ranked security personnel.
Yeah.
It's like a commitment to secrecy, not to talk about certain things.
Yes.
Because of the sensitivity of the positions you've held.
Correct.
And all that. And it was part of my surprise when I learned that you were writing a book.
Yeah.
And I saw that you wrote somewhere that was a consideration for you.
Correct.
The timing of writing this book. I would like you to speak to that.
Yes, so truly there were a lot of questions. If you go to the context, I laid the context in chapter 1. Some of the questions that I had, the challenges that I had, and the question that came to mind. And even now, after, as I was writing, the question that actually came. But I felt like, look, we can't continue along the path that we're going. But at some point, that these issues must be known. But in any case, it might not be total for the public. But of course, for those who are in position of leadership, both political and the military, there will be a desire for a conversation that, within a closed door, some deeper issues can be trashed out. So that actually why I felt, look, enough is enough. If at my level I could, put pen to paper to be able to commit this, then of course, there should be those who will be interested to ask questions. Why did you say this? Yeah. What do you intend to say here? And so on and so forth. In order to, address in totality the problems of defense and security, using Boko Haram as a team.
Get the conversation started.
Correct, because you can't solve a problem that you don't know. I think we are scratching on the surface of some of the problems that we have as a people.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to, share some things with viewers based on my observation as I read. There was that old debate about who's really behind Boko Haram, and this is what will interest viewers. I assure you. That's what they're looking for in your book. Who is really behind Boko Haram? Some people said, oh, it's a politician. Some people said, oh, it's foreign forces. Some people said religious extremists and all that. And the debate just keeps going on and on and on. What did you say in your book?
Well, Boko Haram, who is behind it is a very complex question. But I know what gave rise, I can tell what gave rise to Boko Haram. What gave rise to Boko Haram, in my assessment, has to do with the age-long problem that we have as a people, which is essentially a political problem. In the book, I try to trace the origin, if you like, or some form of history behind some of the political problems, challenges that we have had. So Boko Haram came as an offshoot of those political misalignments. And so those politicians took advantage, wanting to, leverage on the structure at the time to believe that the only way they can gain political leverage is to institute, the introduction of Sharia. And so one thing leading to the other, of course, a few religious scholars took it on and then perhaps thought that they could use that as a platform to now see how the introduction of, or if you like, state religion can be established in some states. And then, of course, that's the reason why, if you recall, at the earlier stages of Boko Haram, there were those, there was a lot of division. Those who, especially, in some quarters, who believed that these are men who were actually Puritanists, who believed that, using Islamic piety, the provisions of the Quran will help to advance the cause of good governance in the country. But that, nobody sees that anymore, because in the classical sense of terrorist organizations, they will always, start from those vulnerabilities and then, of course, strengthen, their path. So this is why today, and I think I also mentioned the irony in one of the chapters, irony of Boko Haram, that after all the destructions, we seem to have come to a conclusion that Boko Haram, that's everyone, most everyone, now have come to the conclusion that Boko Haram is nothing other than evil wind that does no one any good.
There's a chapter where you wrote about, trying to find it now, maybe you will remember it.
Yeah.
The chapter where you wrote about, and this seemed to me like a very touchy issue for you.
Yeah.
The role played by the international community.
Correct. Yeah.
And specifically the U.S.
Yes.
In the Boko Haram.
Yes.
In the Boko Haram.
Yes.
And you wrote extensively about how you felt, how it affected you, and how certain misconceptions.
Yeah, chapter 10.
Yes, chapter 10. Oh, I knew you remember. Political dynamics of Boko Haram crisis and Nigeria sovereignty. Yes, chapter 10, page 209.
Yeah.
Now, so I would like you to speak to that, because I know it's a key chapter.
Yes, it is. And there are two personalities that I refer to. One of them, Major General Lawrence Ngubane, is one of the finest officers that Nigerian Army has ever produced, a thoroughbred infantry officer. I mean, a role model by all standards. And at the time, he was the Chief of Defense Training and Operation, incidentally an office literal that I held before I became CDS. And then there was an issue that happened in Baga. And then Amnesty International went to say that there was genocide. I mean, that there was a mass murder and then mass graves were, and I went on and on. And because of that incident, I mean, I've said all that. This officer who had taken his wife to the U.S. for cancer treatment was denied access to the U.S. until the wife died. And about the same period, the officer was retired. Nobody hears about him. Nobody says anything about him. He suffered it. He's suffering it even to today as an individual. Neither the state and even the U.S., I believe that were misled. So that's why I also believe that, and then recently some of the utterances that have come from some principal officers from U.S. to say, look, I think some elements within the U.S. authorities, they may have also been misled, because we have relied on U.S. If there's any partner we've had, it's the U.S. They are number one partners, and with respect to this war. And I believe that they couldn't, have known that this is the reality, and then they acted the way they did. And this is why I also felt that there has to be some form of conversation between Nigeria and the U.S. so that at the end of the day, let's not have fifth columnists that may be, trying to distort the relationship, a good relationship that we have with the U.S. So this is part, because all those ones give rise to all the embargoes that we have had, arms embargo, among several other issues that have attended to this ding-dong affair in the name of a war against Boko Haram. And I felt that the time has come where, our partnership, not only should it be altruistic, it has to be a win-win partnership. And then that, local authorities should also be trusted to some degree by external actors, for them to know, to hear our story, and for them not to act, based on the reports by middlemen who perhaps they may have contracted, who, for whatever reason, may also have their own interests, deceiving their home governments, rather than actually, bringing out the realities on ground. So this is precisely why I have. And then, of course, there were other issues that had to do with Reuters. I mean, a report that Reuters wrote. Then I was the sitting Chief of Defense Staff. And then I said, no. If this, since it happened in my time, and I know about this period, I have been at the core of it, I yield myself to investigation. And I requested the National Human Rights Commission to please come to investigate that report. And which they did. And then, lo and behold, even though, of course, some of the revelations coming from U.S. DOD and U.S. Department of Government Efficiency. Some of those findings have been, refuted. But then the point is, they were made. And so I thought that there should be the basis for us to deepen the conversation that will lead to a win-win engagement, as it were. Yeah.
I'm going to end on this note. One of the most touching things in your book is when you share the stories of those human stories.
Correct.
Of soldiers that lost their lives at the war front.
Yes.
And having to go to their parents, their families, their wives, and break the news to them and all that. My heart almost broke reading those parts. I could almost feel your emotions. What was that like?
So that also tells you about part of the burden of a commander. You're a leader. So nobody sees that. And then what you'll be asked is, what victories that you'll be able to win on behalf of the state. But what goes on behind it, the emotions that that attend to it, the losses and some of the deeper pains, nobody seems to see it. And so it is for that why I shared it is so that both policymakers and even the general public should be able to understand when we say that give support to not just the military but those who are at the forefront of our defense and security. It's from that point of view. Their families are even worse. They are the ones that feel the pain the most. So if you go, how do you tell a pregnant wife that the husband is dead? If not with the help of the fellow women that are in the barracks. The world does not know that. And then you gather them, and then some of them are medical doctors and nurses, others are just there, those who are better experience. And then gradually the news is broken, and then they manage the situation. You don't see that on TV. You go to the hospital, like one of the stories that I shared, a little girl, I don't think that girl is more than 21 or even 20, just married less than 6 months. And here we are, the husband, the 2 legs are gone. And then even the sobbing by her is enough to break you down. But you have to comfort her in the hospital. And then you see bones, and then medical personnel themselves. It was then I began to appreciate the work of medical personnel. Wonderful people. I don't know how God treated them. That day in, day out, you see those with those kind of conditions, and yet they are the ones that we rely on to manage them. And nobody cares who manages their own emotions, who manages their emotional status. And then I saw signs of PTSD in many of the healthcare workers. Ditto if you go to the IDP camps. Deplorable. And those are all within the war is bad. War is terrible. We must do everything possible to ensure that never again should we get into such conflicts. Boko Haram must end. Every form of violence and insecurity in our country must end. And that's why I advocate for, first and foremost, there has to be a psychological reorientation on how we mitigate conflict. There must be national reconciliation. There must be other means of resolving conflicts. There must be security sector reform. There must be judicial reform. There must be a way for us to enhance good governance. There must be political reorientation. Otherwise, these problems, and we do not pray for another Boko Haram in future, but then this nonsense and madness must stop.
So much packed in there and so much more. We are not done with that interview. We'll be continuing it very soon. So stay glued to your screen. Stay close to this show. That's a book that you really have to read, Scars. It's loaded. It's really loaded. He said he wanted to start a conversation, and boy, has he started one. Great to have General Lucky Irabor on Channel's Book Club. Get yourself a copy of the book. Tell us on our social media platforms what you think about it, your impression, your feedback. And if you have any questions, please send them to us via our social media platforms. We'd like to get your thoughts on this interview and the book titled Scars. This is where we end it. My name is Olakunle Kasumo. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.